So right now we're unboxing everything, uncrating everything, and then I'm positioning it all so the flow works. Like Superman shouldn't be here in the Hollywood section. We're actually moving Superman over to the end of the World War II section because it was him and Captain America, even Batman, that brought us through that. So I'm trying to make sense and put it all, even though it may not, most people will think Superman belongs there. I'm trying to tell a different story about how we got through things. You're number one.
I am.
How are you?
I'm doing fine.
Good, good. I just wanted to greet you and give you a copy of my new book for being first in line.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Thank you guys for coming. Yeah, we've been working 18-hour days for the last 3 or 4 days to get this up, and I really hope you enjoy it. I think you're gonna see some really great things. Thank you guys for coming.
Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hello, America. I am in St. George, Utah, and I am doing an American museum, our history, the good, bad, and ugly. And I'm doing it because we are losing our history. And if we don't learn from the past, then we're going to repeat all of the mistakes that we've made. It's why I'm really opposed to taking down statues. I may not like the guy, but that was part of our history. Learn from it, face it, and remember it. There are about 11,000 people coming in the next few days through this museum. This is something that I started putting together around 2008. I felt that it was important to protect and preserve our American founding documents, and it's gotten way out of control since then. It is the entire story of America and the stories that we have put out in movies and other things that the rest of the world knows us for. I'm going to take you on a tour here in just a second on what we're calling the Red Pill Room. There was a change in the early 1900s, and we became, instead of worshiping God, we began to worship man. But at the same time, because we're self-hating egomaniacs that I don't understand, we also thought we could make a better man because man was flawed. I'll show you that coming up in just a second. The full tour, by the way, is, with an exception of what I'm going to show you, is on Blaze TV right now. If you're a subscriber at blazetv.com/Glenn, you can watch that tour, but it does not cover what I'm going to cover here in just a second. I started collecting this because I thought I had to preserve it. That is still my goal, and it has been nerve-wracking to take it out of a vault and put it in 2 18-wheelers and haul it halfway across the country. But I think sitting in a vault, it may be protected, but it's the vault of our children. It is the vessel that they are, that this information needs to be poured into. So my goal is to have families experience something they may not have experienced before. And what I'm about to show you certainly is that. Come on, let's head downstairs. 4th of July is right around the corner, and the folks at Good Ranchers want you to know about their Independence Day deals. Independence Day, 4th of July. I love the fact they call it Independence Day. From Good Ranchers, they're going to be offering the best deal to give you freedom from the meat aisle and the prices at the meat aisle. You can revolutionize the way you buy meat during their huge 4th of July sale. During this sale, you'll get great opportunities to start buying only meat that was raised here in America. Start eating the best quality meats you've ever tasted. And may I say, most importantly, I think, is you're locking in your price. You want freedom from the meat aisle. Wait until you see the price of meat a year from now, and you'll still be paying exactly the same price. GoodRanchers.com. GoodRanchers.com. You'll get an awesome deal on the best quality beef, chicken, seafood, all of it raised here in America. Celebrate your freedom of opportunity as we get closer and closer to July 4th with amazing new deals from Good Ranchers. Use my code Glenn and get an additional $30 off your order. GoodRanchers.com, code Glenn. Come on in. So we're gonna start over here first, and if you'll see right behind you, come on in this way. You'll see right here, this is the beginning of man was worshiping God, sometimes wrongly, sometimes rightly. We were worshiping God. We lost our way back and forth, but we were still trying to worship God. Now man is worshiping man. This is the beginning of that. And you'll see, come on in guys, these are from the Titanic. This is the Western Union Telegraph that is actually saying, deeply regret to advise you, Titanic sank this morning, 15th after a collision with iceberg, serious loss of life, Carpathia picking up passengers. We will return to New York. When it went out, it was going to Africa, and there happened to be a very great American plein air painter. A plein air painter is somebody who sits his easel out and paints fast before the light changes. He happened to be on the Carpathias. They turned around in the morning, and he sat right on the bridge of the Carpathia, watching what was happening. He painted these two. These were painted the morning where they were picking up the passengers. This is the Carpathia, but it is to show the size. That's the Carpathia. This is what he saw rowing to himself, to his ship, the Carpathia. That is the closest you have to a picture of that rescue. This is the iceberg that the Titanic hit. The first two are worth a read. This is what I believe James Cameron based the entire Titanic on, the movie. This is a 16-year-old girl. She lost her father. She was the only one left in her family. She talks about she was in third class, waking up, hearing the boat hit something. She sits up in bed. The person in the room with her said, "Oh dear God, what has happened?" They go outside. Dad's in the hallway, third class. It was women on one side, men on the other. He got her dressed. They had to climb over the fences, just like the movie, to get to the top. She's one of the first in the boats, just like in the movie. She says, I turned to my dad and said, "Well, you're coming with me." And he said, "No, honey, they're loading the men on the other side," just like in the movie. Then her lifeboat went down, and one of the pulleys slipped, just like in the movie, and it almost tipped her out. She finally got away, and about an hour or so later, she saw the lights begin to flicker, the ship lift up, crack in half, and go down. She waited in Grand Central Station for somebody to claim her as family. It's a riveting story. This is the largest piece of the Hindenburg that we know of that is remaining. This is another worship of man. This was another great way to fly, except it was all with hydrogen. That's not really good, especially in a thunderstorm, which they were. They were in New Jersey. They were coming to land. One guy I read that gave testimony on what happened, he said he saw a light blue flame start at the back and travel across, and then it exploded. It took 29 seconds to go from everything's fine to nothing but this laying on the ground and the dead on the ground. 29 seconds. That's why I painted this painting called 29 Seconds. It is how fast your life can change and be over or completely different. I want to go over here. One of the one of our presidents, Theodore Roosevelt, there's one of my favorite stories of Theodore Roosevelt is the guy was just, he lived every second of his life fully. And he was an adventurer, and nothing really slowed him down, including an assassination attempt. It's 1912, I think. He is in Madison, Wisconsin, and he's about to accept the nomination of his party, the Progressive Bull Moose Party. He started that, and he's about to accept the nomination in Madison, Wisconsin. So he's in a building across the street, and he's meeting with donors, et cetera, et cetera. He has to go give his acceptance speech. He walks out of the building, and a guy who's actually a big fan of his, but didn't think any president should serve 3 terms. Washington only did 2. It used to be very clear. Do you think you're better than George Washington? Theodore Roosevelt was the first to really kind of challenge that, and one of his supporters didn't think that was right, so he came up to him and he said, "Mr. President." And Roosevelt turned and he shot him right here, okay? Should have killed him, but he didn't, because he gave extraordinarily long speeches and wrote them out. He also, his glasses, he kept in a leather case right here. His glasses and his speech. Shoots him, and everybody freaks out. "Mr. President, Mr. President." He takes out a handkerchief and he says, "Hold on." Takes out a handkerchief. He first pulls his hand out and there's blood all over his hand. Then he pulls his handkerchief out. He coughs in it 3 times and looks at it each time. And he's like, they just pinked me. He was checking to see if there was any blood in his lungs. What had happened is the bullet had slowed down enough to where it lodged between 2 of his ribs. He died years later with that bullet still in him. He then said, as everybody's freaking out, "I got to go give a speech." And he buttoned up his jacket and he walked on stage. He pulled his speech out of his pocket, which had bullet holes in it. And he said, let me talk to you here. He had about a 90-minute speech. He said, "But I don't know how much wind power I have because somebody just shot me." And everybody did that. They laughed. They thought he was joking. And about halfway through, he's giving the speech and he does this, and the blood is all over his shirt. The crowd gasps, and he said, "What? I told you someone tried to shoot me." He said, "But it takes more than that to kill a bull moose." Okay? These are his glasses, and that is his speech that had been folded over, and you'll see the 2 bullet holes. This is the last page of his speech.
I did not know that Teddy Roosevelt had been shot. I had no idea that he had ever been shot, and so to see the letter with the bullet holes in it and everything, amazing. I had no idea of that history. I toured the Smithsonian a couple of months ago back in Washington, D.C., and coming here and seeing this display gives you a totally different perspective of what American history was. You get more of the true history here.
To see the original documents so that they know it's not just coming from their parents, what their parents want them to hear, but that they can see for themselves the true history of our country is pretty amazing.
I really appreciated how it was laid out. It made it really clear. And especially taking my 12-year-old through that, because he was really, his eyes were opened, especially on some of the parts that were more graphic.
The wheelchair of one of our presidents, just random things that are really incredible.
Things that would make you cry, things that make you laugh, seeing just the Enigma machine, seeing Nazis in Madison Square Garden. I had no idea that ever happened, that we had American propaganda for furthering the perfection of the white race as recent as not even like 100 years ago. The props that they had for Mengele is just made me cry. And it's insane that for as much as progress that we think we've made over the past few hundred years, that there's still unbelievable things that we'll do to another human being. It's crazy.
The biggest change, by the way, that's one of the first electric chairs. I invite you to learn about Tesla and Edison. I hate Edison. He was a horrible, horrible man. Horrible man. Read just a little bit about the hanging elephant, and you'll understand. But this is the beginning of the progressive era with Theodore Roosevelt. Something changed in the 1800s in mankind. You could have all kinds of racist points of view, but you never had science proving that point of view until you get to Origin of the Species and then the Descent of Man. Now you have science telling you there are subhumans. So if you have subhumans, well, then maybe we should separate. Maybe I'm better than that person. All kinds of things start to open up, all bad. This is where we get this image. This is from the book, the 5 series of 5 books here in this case, from Woodrow Wilson, The History of the American People. 5 volumes. He completely leaves out any black patriot, any positive black. This is the picture or engraving of a black person, obviously subhuman. Once you turn that in, everything changes. I'm going to take you into the Red Room. The first place that you will stop is something that Woodrow Wilson premiered in the White House 2 times. It's called Birth of a Nation by D.W. Griffith. It is nothing but holding the Klan up, saying the Klan saved our nation. Come on.
Well, because I do watch Glenn Beck and I do find an importance in history over the last 8 years I started, it reinforced it. So it wasn't just, oh, mom's talking about that again. Mom said this, mom's talking about that. But now he's actually got like actual documentation, history to follow up with it. So it's just a reinforcement that I'm not just making stuff up.
I'm aware of some of the negative things that we've done, but the way that it makes me feel worse about in America is that we don't tell people about. I didn't learn this in school. I didn't learn it in junior high school. I didn't learn it in high school. It's from reading when I became an adult. And it's not secret information. It's not hidden information. It's just information we decide to not teach kids in public school. We want to talk about horrible things that America has done, but we don't give the whole context or all the details.
There's so much that is being distorted. And so we've had a lot of conversations, my son and I, throughout this whole exhibit. And he's like, well, I heard this and I heard that. And I was like, you have to dig more to get the real true history to make sure that what you're learning is the truth. I loved that it was youth teaching about a lot of the exhibits. I thought that was really special because they are the next generation.
And it's nice that he's preserved all of this so that we have actual evidence that we can show our children.
I feel inspired, empowered, really, kind of a sense of needing to speak out and to stand for freedom and kind of figure out what my part is in all of this and go do it, go to work, go to battle, really.
I want to talk to you about one of our sponsors, and I love my sponsors because I choose them. I reject a lot of sponsors, and Jase Medical is one of those that really kind of started with us, and they do amazing work. They're actually here at the museum. They, without asking for anything, actually spent the money to help defray the cost of some of this museum. They're great people. Anyway, they have the Jase case out that I've told you for a while. Holds 5 of the most important antibiotics for emergency use. But I'm happy to announce they're launching a new product, Jase Daily. It is a prescription supply service that allows you to get up to a 12-month backup supply of your prescription medication in case of an emergency or a supply chain breakdown. Cover everything, really. Cholesterol, diabetes, heart, blood pressure, mental health, you name it, they can help you get a full year and have it in your home or wherever you're going to protect it and keep it safe. Go to jasemedical.com. That's Jase, Jase medical.com. Make sure you use the promo code Beck at checkout for a discount.
The KKK was petering out until Woodrow Wilson got in. We have pictures of gigantic parades happening in Washington, D.C., all dressed in Klan clothes. This Klan outfit is small because it was made for a woman. This is one of the earliest Klan hoods we can find, just terrifying just at that. But the Klan was the enforcing arm, and I don't want to make this political, so just know that this is back then. The people that were in the Democratic Party needed an enforcement arm. It was all about keeping blacks away from voting. They're subhuman. So you can do whatever you want. But the one thing you should know, these are the lynchings by state and race, and you will see the total is 4,743 lynchings, but that includes 1,297 whites. This, you have the Klan with a rope around the white man's neck. Why? Because he believed all men were created equal, and that included blacks. That was generally the GOP viewpoint. In fact, all GOP at that time, because I don't know if we put the GOP platform out with Lincoln, but that's all the platform was about. That those first few years, it was only about ending racism and slavery. Come on along. In that case that you're passing is a book. It has to be preserved. This history has to be preserved. It's an entire book based on postcards of lynchings. Postcards of lynchings. This is one of them. A black man lynched and set on fire. This is a postcard, and on the back, someone wrote, "This is the barbecue we had last night. Wish you were there." We have pictures in that book of churches setting up picnics at lynchings. It is obviously horrible, but if you've categorized people as subspecies, what's so wrong with that? I want to show you that this, I believe this was in Yale. I could be wrong, but this is early American progressives. And it talks about every time this light flashes, every 15 seconds, $100 of your money goes to help somebody who is too feeble or doesn't have, a worthy life. And it's tying your money to life. It goes on to talk about how families of the infirm, those who have disease, et cetera, how this is making the point we need to reduce the population. We need to be able to selectively sterilize or abort children. Now, this is Yuval Harari. He is one of the big thinkers of today's world. He's with the World Economic Forum, but you have a hard time finding anybody in power today that doesn't love this guy. In it, he talks about how there is a great unemployment crash coming before 2030. How do we handle the useless class? Very dangerous language. His solution is we drug them and keep them online, but they'll be useless eaters. Extraordinarily dangerous. This is George Bernard Shaw. He was a wicked Fabian socialist. He says in this film, there's got to be some people that we all know that don't have a life worth living, some people that we'd all like to kill.
But there are an extraordinary number of people whom I want to kill. Not in any unkind or personal spirit, but it must be evident to all of you, you must all know half a dozen people at least, who are no use in this world, who are more trouble than they are worth. And I think it would be a good thing to make everybody come before a properly appointed board, just as he might come before the income tax commissioners, and say every 5 years or every 7 years, just put him there and say, sir or madam, now will you be kind enough to justify your existence? If you can't justify your existence, if you're not pulling your weight in the social boat, if you're not producing as much as you consume, or perhaps a little more, then clearly we cannot use the big organization of our society for the purpose of keeping you alive.
This is George Bernard Shaw, who is celebrated still today. Gas chamber, his idea. This is now, you're mixing science with eugenics. You have this science, it's okay, they're subspecies, and evolution. So maybe we can speed evolution up. And we have science now that will tell us all kinds of things. This is the guy who created the lobotomy. His instrument here, it's a leucotomy, is original because the idea was women sometimes, you know, at that time of the month, they can be cranky. This will help them. And it's a device you stick into the eye, and basically it scrambles the frontal lobe. We now know it is a lobotomy, but it was started to help women. It's important to see compassion for what it turns into. This is the man who was the sexologist in the Weimar Republic. He did the first trans surgery. This is that man. He died. The first trans surgery was done in the Weimar Republic. It became very, very decadent and out of control. He did this surgery on this man. He stuffed a uterus inside of him. He obviously died from, I believe, toxic shock. You know, body kind of rejects that. I want you to see that eugenics, we are the ones who taught eugenics to the Nazis. I want to show you this. Where is it? Human Betterment Society. I am currently scouring the country trying to find more from the Human Betterment Society. This is one letter, and it is from the Nazis to the Human Betterment Society in California. This was at Stanford. And they went over and they taught the Nazis how to do all of this stuff. And this letter is from the Nazis back to them. They say, and I hope this is true, the last line of the letter is, "We hope you never, ever forget the role you played in waking up a nation of 60 million people to the power of eugenics. We taught it to them. They took it, and you'll see in a minute what it becomes." Also notice here that there are pictures of Nazis gathering in groups. They are pictures from the American Bund movement. The Nazi Party filled Madison Square Garden right prior to the war. So come on down. We go from the Nazis and what they're doing out of compassion and to make sure that the country is healthy and whole, to, again, compassion, the baby Nauer case and child K. These are the two children, the first children to be executed. Hitler sends his own physician to be able to look at the baby and make sure that it was the compassionate thing to do to kill him, and he has his own doctor kill him and drug him. That turns into the T4 project, which was emptying out the children's hospitals, and then they went to old people, then they went to sick people, and they would back a truck up, load all the passenger or all of the patients in, seal the truck off, put the hose from the exhaust in, and it was a horrible, horrible way to die. and they just gassed people over and over, and then they had to expand into buses, and then it turned into the camps. This is the letter here authorizing the death of children and authorizing doctors to kill people in compassion. Then they started to categorize people. This is the German categorizing of different people, and you will see red is a political prisoner, green is a convicted criminal, immigrant is blue, Jehovah Witness, or anyone who actually stood, religiously speaking, against Hitler. Pink is a homosexual. Asocials, really, really nasty people, were black, violent black, and they got that black triangle. And most likely, if you were in a concentration camp, the guy who was the guard, the prisoner that guarded the prisoners, would be a black triangle. And they categorize from down there. At the end of the hall is an exact replica of the shower door of Auschwitz that was closed. You can look through the peephole if you want. Here is, this is the last prescription made by Joseph Mengele. It is for, we did the translation on it, it is for 1,000 liters of luminol. Luminol is what they were using to kill the children. He wrote it for the Children's Hospital. We did the math on it. That's enough to kill 100,000 adults. He wrote it for the Children's Hospital. This is a little bit of what it was like in his office. He was surrounded by body parts and things, but this was all approved medicine. All of it was approved. And if you come over, if you guys will stand over here for a second, I want to show you some things. This is the medical book. This is one of the first medical books made in Germany before the war is over, with all of the lessons they learned on these experiments. It's a horrifying book. When the war was over, we had to decide, what do we do? Do we destroy this knowledge, or do we honor the people that were horribly tortured so we know how to treat hypothermia? The West decided to use it, so most hospitals have big portions of this book as the basis in our medical field. But it was all done heroically and with permission. Let's see. This is an award from Der Fuhrer, signed by Adolf Hitler, for IG Farben. Anybody know what that company did? This is the Fuhrer saying, thank you for doing the Reich such a great service by producing Zyklon B, which is the gas they used in the gas chambers. They hung I can't believe this still exists. They hung an award for it. This is the doctor that oversaw people like Mengele. Like I said, this was fine medicine the doctors approved. This is the head of the German Red Cross. He was also the doctor, think of this, he's the head of the Red Cross. He's also the doctor that was giving the final direction on his surgeries, also on how much Zyklon B needs to be used per person. This is one of the pages. We have Hitler's date book, his calendar, his desk calendar. These are all the people he met with from 37 to 39. This is one page. We pulled this page out because he was visited by, last name, Windsor. Anybody know that name? The former King of England, who had just left the throne because he was disgraced. He met with Hitler, and he was very Nazi, pro-Nazi. And he was making a deal with Hitler, go into England, take over, and put me back in as king. This is a document regarding a guy who has disappeared at night at the end because he wasn't loyal enough. This is the head of the teachers union, who was also big in the Nazi party. You had to be a Nazi to hold anything. The teachers unions were so important. This book is a teacher's guide to teach your class how to differentiate between a Jew and a German, and uses evolution from Origin of the Species to show how it's okay to gene splice plants and how that works, and how you don't want bad seeds mixing with good seeds. By the end, it shows the kids why it's a good thing that their Jewish friends are now missing in their class. One last thing on this wall, or two things. This is actually from a concentration camp. This is a slave labor camp from Poland. And on this wall, we just acquired Adolf Hitler's handwritten victory speech, where he says, "Do not call this a victory. We'll call this a victory. We all scream now for war." It's a frightening, frightening speech, all in his own hand, and I'll meet you around the corner.
Things of the Second World War were impressive to me because I lived through that period of time, and it was a hard time for everyone. But I learned a lot about it that I didn't know in this display. It had a lot of things that we were not familiar with. You know, they just we didn't have the news like we do now. I don't think they know a lot about that. I just don't think that they're being taught about the Second World War much. And the time before that, in fact, history is disappearing from the schools as far as I know. And I think it's a tragedy because this is our country and we need to know where we came from and what we're all about. And this is a wonderful way to learn.
I really like that history about the World War II. That's probably my favorite exhibit, if you ask me.
You know, we've had so much of our history that maybe hasn't been perfect, but the founding of this country with God and the founders is just remarkable that we have these freedoms now, and to preserve these documents and to help the next generation understand how important freedom is really awesome.
I think it was pretty cool being Native American from Chico, California, that George Washington gave a medal to a Native American. And I would have never thought that. In fact, I hated America, didn't pledge. I would stand, but never said it, never put my heart on my chest because I had believed that the government, which everybody, people are people, destroyed Indians, and they did. But at the same time, there was Indians, like code talkers, that were there. And, as I learn more and more history, it's kind of cool to be like, all right, there's some people who are fighting for Native Americans, Black people, Chinese people, Japanese people, all the people that come to America to be an American.
When was the last time you checked the legal title to your home? Me? When I bought my house. And I didn't check it. Somebody else checked it, right? No. That's to buy it. Then nobody checks it. How long you been living in your house? This is why home title theft is so insidious. Nobody's watching this. And so it's really easy to take your home title. They forge one signature, move it into their name. They take out loans against your property, and then you're stuck with the bills, and the sheriff comes knocking and says, "This isn't your house." It is so bad. Please, before you become a victim, would you just do yourself a favor and go to HomeTitleLock.com, HomeTitleLock.com. Get a free review of your property to make sure that everything is there. HomeTitleLock.com will then protect you from here on out to make sure you never become a victim of home title fraud. HomeTitleLock.com. Make sure you use the promo code BECK at checkout.
Couple of things. This is the wrong film. Sorry for all the people coming through. This is supposed to be The Black Stork. It is a movie done by the Progressives, Human Betterment Society, etc. In about 1918. It was The Black Stork. There's 2 copies left. One is in a university library. We have another one to preserve it, to make sure that nobody forgets. This is a story about children that just shouldn't live. And in the climactic scene, the doctor actually and the nurse together smother a child in the bassinet. And that's when Christ appears and looks at them, thank you. And then the spirit of the baby he takes home and thanks the doctors, okay? It's twisted Christianity. The progressive ideology and the idea of genetics or eugenics just becomes twisted and nasty. This is also part of that movement. This is Margaret Sanger. Everyone has to decide if it's compassionate or if it's murder. But this is the original case that made the case on Roe versus Wade. I just purchased this from Roe's attorney, and it's every document from the Supreme Court. It is every note, everything. She was hoping that it would fall into the hands of a progressive to inspire a new generation to fight for Roe versus Wade. Tanya was the one who really was the one that gave permission to get this. And I asked her, honey, it's going to be expensive. How much are you willing? And she said, well, it's only worth 64 million lives. What do you think? And we are not going to let it fall into the hands to be used for a next generation, to be inspiration. This is actually got this from an abortion clinic. This is a suction machine and tools used in abortions. This is a demonstration, assuming all babies were aborted at 12 weeks, they would be this size. You'll look at the top. If we put all of the babies, assuming they were all aborted no later than 12 weeks, this barrel would go from October to November 1976. Okay? We have made thousands of these barrels, and of course they weren't all this size. This is jackboot thugs. That is a Nazi SS uniform, and the boots, and that is a chair for persons of interest. Again, these are glasses that pile in Auschwitz. If you've ever been there, you'll never forget it. And a pile of prosthetics, arms, legs, crutches, anything that the feeble used, they also took all of those. And I want to end this room with this. This came to me as a scolding. I collect this stuff. I'm looking for this stuff, and then I'm doing the news and I'm seeing the connections, and it gets very dark. And I said to the Lord once, I can't do it. This is recently. I can't. I can help me look someplace else, okay? And he's been very clear with me over the years. I'm to warn. I'm not to solve the problem. I'm to warn the people. And I was particularly lippy with him one day, and he said, as he always does, that's okay, but do you want to know where to look to find me? I will be in the darkest places, because that's where I am. I'm comforting because you're too afraid to look at it. You won't stand up and do anything, but I am there. I've been in every concentration camp. I have been in the darkest places, and I am part of the good that is there, standing and helping and being compassionate. So I painted this It's our Lord if he would have been born in Germany and he was in a concentration camp, because he was there. He was there.
And it just touched my heart so much, because it rings true that Christ, that would be Christ, and that he goes to where the most trouble is in the world, in the darkest places. And that really touched my heart.
Glenn Beck's heart's wonderful. Glenn Beck's wonderful.
Yeah, we loved him.
Glenn Beck, stop putting yourself down, because your artwork's amazing.
Learning more about God and understanding how impactful deity was to the founding fathers and how much that influenced our Declaration of Independence and our Constitution. It's what we have to go back to, and it's what's going to save us, honestly, is having that belief and love for God.
My goal with this museum is to plant it deep into people's hearts, and we hope to take it to your town. We're also hoping to sell a lot of t-shirts to help pay for some new artifacts that we can preserve and make sure coming generations never forget the truth of who we are and the mistakes that we might have made. Good night, America.